Hi guys, this is Truman Hudson, your program coordinator for your college. And what I'm going to be going through today for you guys is I'm going to be showing you how to do amendments to returns. Now, I want to point out a couple differences between, doing an amendment and between just filing a return before actually getting to the process of showing you how it's done. Now, the major difference between an amendment and just filing a return is that when you're filing an amendment, you're assuming that this return has already been accepted, and what has happened is that when it was the amount that was originally accepted was incorrect, and this person now needs to go back and fix those incorrect amounts so that the correct amounts may now be reflected. Now, when you're filing a regular return, you are doing it with a goal so that it can be accepted. So at this point, you are filing everything under the assumption that all of the information is already correct, and you are just trying to get your client their refund or get them to see what exactly they're going to be owing the IRS, regardless of the outcome. So that's the first thing I want to point out as far as amendments and just filing a return. When you're doing an amendment, you definitely want to make sure that your client is from our site. Why I say this is because before you can start making any changes to a return, you have to make sure that the return that you have in your system was done exactly the way that it was done when they originally filed. So if a client went and they filed their taxes with somebody else, let's say H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, whatever the case may be, and then they come to our site to do their taxes, get their amendments, what's going to happen is it's going to be very difficult for us to reflect exactly how it was done originally, because they may have used a different tax program or whatever the case may be. So the second thing you want to make sure is that not only did your client already file a return and it was accepted, but also that they did it at our site. Now, once you've made sure that these two things are in line, what's going to happen is you're going to pull up your client return in the system, make sure that go back over it and make sure that everything that you have in the system was done exactly how they did it originally. They should have a copy of that year's return, that way you could double check and just look back to make sure that nothing was changed between the time when they filed and right now. Once you've made sure that everything is good, what you're going to do next is you're going to be adding in the amendment forms. Now I'm going to go to add and I'm going to type in 1040X. This is the amendment form for the federal. And then I'm going to add in the 201X, which is the state amendment form. Alright. Now I'm going to kind of give you guys an overview of this form. If you guys remember what I said earlier, you have to make sure that the original numbers that you had, that the client originally did, is what we currently have in our system. The reason why is because how this form works is that it takes the original return that was done right here based on what you have in your system currently, and then you are going to make changes in it, which is going to come up in column B right here. And then what's going to happen is it's going to adjust this original amount by whatever your net change is to give you a new reflected correct amount. And the only way you can do this is to ensure that the original amount was the same as when the client did it, putting in the different changes now, get the new result. Now another thing is that this box right here that says check to override all entries in column A. Before you make any changes on the return, you have to make sure that you check this box. Why is because if you do not check this box and you make your changes, what's going to happen is the system is going to automatically assume that everything that is currently here, including the changes that you just made, is a part of the original amount, but you don't want that. What you want is all the changes that you're making, you want it to go into column B where it says net change. Alright, so for the return that I'm using as an example, I'm using the Rose Hudson in publication 4491W. And what I did was I only put in her W2. I did not put in her interest statement amount. Reason being is because I want to show how the net change works. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to check this box right here to say check to override all entries in column 1, and you can notice that everything here is now blue. Right, and I'm going to move over to here and I'm going to increase her schedule B interest amounts to $36. Now what you notice is that her AGI went up. And how you know is that you can go to this 1040x page 1 right here, and you're gonna see what the original amount is. You can see that I increased her interest statement by $15, and it gives us a new correct AGI. So now the new one is now 31,951, and the original amount was 31,936. So it shows what your original amount is. It does not change this. It shows what your changes have been, and it shows what these changes are going to bring as far as the new reflected amounts. Right. Also, another thing is, if you go to the next section, because this first section right here is just for the income and deduction. This is just showing you what the changes have been as far as income that you put in. If you go to the next section where it says tax liability, now because I raised that amount by $15, what happened is that her tax liability went up by $7. So what this means is that she's getting $7 less, or she would have to have paid $7 more throughout the year to, you know, completely cover all her taxes. So you're gonna see right here that originally she was only supposed to pay $2,939, but with the change that I made, she was supposed to have really paid $2,946. So that's an increase of $7 in her tax liability. Right. Her payments have not changed because my change on the interest statement does not affect whatever taxes that she paid throughout the year. So this number is still going to be the same. Moving down here, however, it shows this is what her overpayment was originally, $47. Originally, as far as the IRS was concerned, she overpaid $47, which is the amount that she was owed back. Now, if you look at line 18, what's going to happen is you're going to subtract this amount here from what we have here, which is the total payments that she made. So originally she made $2,986. According to the IRS, she really overpaid $47. This leaves $2,939. So now she owes the IRS an amount of $7. Why she owes them $7? Because the $47 was already sent to her. So this amendment is so that the IRS can get back whatever money it is that she possibly have owed them. Okay. And moving on over to the second page right here, you have to fill out a explanation of changes. Basically, why are you filing the 1040X? Was it, you know, because you received a letter from the IRS, or because you realized that you made a huge error on your own, that you realize you made a huge error on your tax return, and you want to go back and fix it so that you could possibly get a bigger refund? Because not in all cases when you do an amendment, it's going to be just so you can pay back more money. There are times when you might realize that you didn't get a certain credit. I mean, you didn't get your EIC credit for this year, or somebody didn't give you a certain deduction which you are entitled to, and you want to get that deduction. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back, put that in, and here you're going to make an explanation of the changes. For this, I'm going to assume that the reason why she's making the change is because the IRS sent her a letter. Because usually, if somebody realizes, they didn't pay all their taxes, but they already got accepted and nobody's bothering them, they just kind of run with it. But in this case, I'm going to assume that the IRS did send her a letter. So I'm going to say okay, and then you're gonna have to put in the date of which you're doing the amendment, and this date is gonna be different from the date that you originally did the return. So in this case, it's gonna be like this. Alright, So you notice here that now we have completed it. It says, it shows what the date is on the when we did the amendment. Another thing to point out is that all amendments that we do not e-file those. They are always paper returns. So you should never be trying to e-file an amendment after it's already been accepted. You're going to be printing out 2 copies for your client, one for themselves so that they can keep it for their records, and the other one, which is what they're going to be mailing off to the IRS or the state, depending. Okay, so this is basically how the amendment works for the federal side. Quick review: do the return as it was originally done. Check this box before you make any changes. Make your changes. Take note of the column to make sure that the changes that you did make are the ones that you want to be reflected in the new correct amount. Once you make sure that everything is good as far as that is concerned, if your liability changed or went up, you're going to go to page 2 and you're going to say why you're making these changes, regardless of whatever the reason is. Just kind of put a brief thing in these lines, and then that's pretty much it as far as the 1040X on the federal. It's once you pretty much have an understanding of how the other forms work. For this one, it's just basically still using the other forms, but allowing this form to recognize all the changes that you've made. So the 1040X itself is not a difficult form. It's just to make sure that all the other forms that you've added in or that you're currently using, you have all the correct numbers on those, because those are what will impact the numbers on the 1040X. So now I'm going to move down to 201X, which is the state version of the amendment forms. Now earlier what I did was I had checked the box for the 1040X here to say check and make changes. Now if your client had a change to do on the state side, you'd also have to have done the same thing. So before making any change to any form, let's say in this case I assume that she had a change to be done on the federal side. Now let's say that your client had a change to make on the state side. Now what you would do is you check this box right here, before you make any changes, the same way we did on the federal side. And once you check this, then you can make all the changes that you need. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a change just to show you guys how this would work. I'm going to increase her federal tax withheld. Right. After I've increased and changed all her federal tax withheld on the W-2, if you go down to the 1040X, the NY201X, page 5 on the state side, you notice that it pretty much has the same thing as earlier, where it asks your reasons for amending your return, but what it does this time is that it gives you a list itself. So it doesn't really give you the option to explain really in great detail why you're doing it. You could use this line M right here to give a little brief explanation. However, they do provide you with a list. So for here, what I'm going to say is reasons for amending your return. It could be a federal audit change. However, in this case, since you realize maybe your W-2 federal tax withheld was incorrect, which chances are it won't happen because they do match up the W-2 with their returns. So what would have happened is they would have gotten rejected, and not so much that it would have gotten accepted and that you'd have to make a return. But just for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using that. So I'm going to put explain. So, incorrect tax withheld. Incorrect. Yeah. to make sure I got my spelling right. Nope, I did not. So you guys did not see that. Okay, so what I did here was I said that my reason for doing the amendment is because of incorrect tax withheld. Again, you're gonna put the date 2012. And that's pretty much going to be it for the state side. It's very similar to the federal side. Again, it's just checking to make sure that you made your changes before, making sure that you check the box before you made your changes. Here it does the same thing, however it doesn't do it as visually easy to understand as the federal, but it still does the same thing here, where what it does is it shows you what everything was in your original return. Okay, so what you have right here, it shows you what the original amount was paid on the return plus additional tax paid after. You put in the amount, and that's pretty much it as far as the state side is concerned. So again, they're both the same thing. You just definitely want to make sure two things: that you get the numbers right the first time, you check the box before you make the changes, and then once you make the changes, that you go back and you make changes for whatever the returns are, and you double check that everything is accurate as far as what you want. Because sometimes you may actually go back, make a change that's still wrong, you didn't double check it, they amend it and it's still wrong, and then they have to do this whole process all over again. So you definitely want to double check these things. If you guys have any questions, again, as far as how to do an amendment, how to get the forms, you can always email us, contact us. On the IRS website, they do have it, instructions for the form 1040X and for the 201X. So what you can do is, well, they have it for the 1040X, I believe. I'm not sure if they have it for the 201X. For it right here, what I have is instructions for form 1040X. So again, you guys can always go on irs.gov website, read this, get yourself some more detailed explanation of how the form works. But it's basically making sure of two things: that you get the first return correctly done, meaning the original amounts reflect whatever it was that it did originally, and then from there make your changes after you check the box, not before. Once you've done that, check to make sure that everything has been reflected. Put in your reasons for making the amendment, regardless if it's on the state or on the federal, and then printing out your copies for your client, letting them get one, you also, and they get another one to mail. Sign it. The date is going to be listed on both of them so that they can see when they actually did the amendment, and then from there it's just a matter of waiting to make sure that everything else is good, that the IRS doesn't audit them again, or that they've been happy with their new refund. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys found this helpful. Again, if you guys have any questions, you can send us an email at vitalrecruiting2012 @gmail.com. Alright guys.